my first step ever podcast, and I am Ishani Nigam, your host and producer of the podcast. This podcast is made for all the disruptors around the globe who know that they are made for something, for that one thing, but fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, the fear of fear itself holds us back at some point in time. But hey, those are the only milestones that if we cross, we are there to take our first steps. So, welcome on this journey with me where I interview people from across the globe so that they can share their story, their challenges, and you know that even you can surpass yours. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome on my first step ever. This is a show for you, for the youth, for the disruptors, or anyone who has that mindset who like to kind of rewind, unwind things in life, or probably sit back and think that what is that they really want. But most importantly, build the conviction to follow what you really want. And that's why we have someone who is young and really, making great things happen in his life and impacting people's life, the youth's life. At this point in time, when you are, really trying to kind of think through your life, think through things, the most important thing comes down to who you really are, what your identity is, and where you see yourself, where you place yourself. And that's exactly which forms the basis and form, the foundation of where you might end up in life. And we have someone who has really been able to, decipher that thing for himself and is now in a journey to help a lot of people, migrant youth in Australia, and probably his insights and his learnings would be helpful for a lot of people who have migrated anywhere, the youth in the country, in the globe today. So please join me in welcoming a really really interesting and he's a very curious person, I feel, from whatever I have understood so far, but I like to uncover a bit more about him along with you. So please join me in welcoming Saad Khalid, all the way from Canberra, Australia. Hi, Saad. Welcome on my first step ever.
Hi, Shani. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to a great chat.
Before we move into the conversation today and we kind of discover a bit about you and your journey so far. I mean, you're very young, but I feel like the age that you're in, you might have dealt with a certain things, an internal dialogue or situations that has helped you find a voice of your own. And that's what we are looking for our listeners today. But before we move into that, I'd like to introduce you to my listeners. So Saad, at the age of 21, is already making strides in the multicultural Australia landscape. Recognized for his effervescent ability to achieve, he has elevated youth migrant perspective in contemporary social discourse. Now, this is a very, very relevant, important, and I would say a serious topic, but it's good that we are, able to have this conversation in a way that people, the youth, can really understand. And even for anyone who's listening to us, it kind of relates to them. And he's awarded at the national level and eagerly starts unique skill set has propelled in the cross section of communications and the not-for-profit sector. In broadcasting, he has produced a high viewership documentary and podcast on migrant legacy in Australia. So if you're someone who is in Australia and trying to kind of understand things in your journey, you're somewhere place around that, definitely do give a listen to the podcast that Saad has really started. And he's got a good viewership over there as well. So, serving on a several esteemed boards and committees, he provides strategic guidance on engagement strategy with a focus on multicultural youth. He has a passion for social impact and greater good in society, enjoying a good coffee. Saad loves new perspective and seeks to grow. Now, this is a really kind of amazing way to describe your journey so far, but there lies in some really deep and meaningful and impactful things, projects, or probably the decisions, the policies that you are impacting right now. At the age of 22, 21, so sorry, I just increased your 1 year. But let me kind of, go as you are kind of, holding that, you're being the torchbearer for a lot of migrant youth over here in Australia. I like to go back to your childhood and over here and understand what was the mindset that you grew up in and you were surrounded in if you were brought up in Australia?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of my story, I came to Australia when I was about 14, 15, moved with my parents here to Canberra. I grew up in a unique sort of household. My dad's a diplomat, so he moved around the world. I grew up around the world, changed about 9 schools in 12 years. So a lot of moving around. Grew up mainly in the US, in Pakistan, the Middle East, and a few other places. But really, when I came to Australia, I changed 9 schools at that point, and it really made me appreciate, yeah, the different perspectives that each of the world cities that I've been in that brings, but also the people that everyone has their own unique story and unique perspective, and that they're looking to make a mark on the world. So coming to Australia at a teenage age, I've been here about what 7, 8 years now. I think it's really made me appreciate what Australia stands for and how unique it is and how everyone comes together and makes a multicultural Australia. Even.
Okay, this is a really surprise for me, a sort of a shocker, because I thought probably you came here when you were like a baby, or maybe you were born here. But you have a very unique childhood. I mean, I think you already are aware of it. Not many people get to, get the opportunity to travel different countries at that young age. And in a way, there are lots of pros and cons. And I'm really intrigued to kind of understand that you moved to Australia at a very fragile age of being in teens. I have seen my friends or people who have just shifted to school around that time, in that age, in the same city, and things have not been good for them, because you associate a lot of things about you with your friends at that time, with what your life is just
Yeah,
those people or those things around you. So it is a very interesting upbringing, childhood, that and a teenage time that you had. I'd like to sort of dig in a deep over here, because it might have developed certain sensibilities in you differently from a lot of us who are born and brought up most of their life at a certain place. Can you take us through anything that has been a really different perspective for you while growing in this way, that probably informs you of your identity in a much assuring way, or probably it did not?
I think what really defines me and how I engage and how life has been for me in Australia, I think the title of first generation or second generation migrant, and that I'm one of those people that can't really fall into the bucket of, yep, he's a first generation migrant because I grew up around the world, grew up in the US, but I can't really be called the second generation migrant in that my parents took the first steps, but I was at a very unique sort of age. So I think that title is something that has really defined me. So whenever I see it come up in discussions whenever people ask, "Oh, where'd you grow up? Oh, what do you do?" I have a unique story to say, in that I have cool perspectives. I have friends around the world. I've changed many schools, and that coming to Australia, I think it was just a chance to even reinvent myself and really discover what it means to be a migrant. And I think that culture is celebrated here really well, in that migrants have made up Australia's immigration for a number of years, and that multicultural Australia post 1980s, 1990s has really been championed, really been celebrated. And I think over the last few years, particularly, I think there's been a real focus. And I think people like me that move to Australia at a teenage age or otherwise, they have a role to play in the modern policy making decisions, because it's often a gray zone of the population that you don't really consider. And that, yeah, there's people that are sort of between the first and second generation migrant bracket. And I think that's really what defines me.
That's interesting. And I think on a personal level, I like to kind of ask you something like, when you have been moving so many different countries and cities, did you ever have to deal with the feeling of probably, not feeling connected to people at the very go, and feeling that you are not part of the clan, or, feeling odd one out? Did you ever have those sort of feelings? Because I think people who are listening to us, a lot of us have gone through that phase, even being in the same country or the same city, if you have, and how have you dealt with that?
I think those feelings are definitely there at some points in time when you go in. I came into a year 9 classroom. You have to introduce yourself. You have to introduce what you stand for. People have been together in Australia. You would know that people go to school together, primary school, high school, onto university even. So people have those friendships sort of rested in. And here's this new guy coming in at year 9. He's like, oh, hey, I'm the new guy here. Would love to make some friends. Would love to know more people. Would love to understand the Australian culture. So I think it was a learning process for the first couple of years, just understanding what Australian values are, what people stand for, and the things that they look out for. So I think that was definitely a learning experience. And then from that point onwards, really thriving, really engaging, and really participating in different parts of society and different parts,
Interesting.
volunteering, working, doing a whole bunch of interesting things. But I think the first couple of years were just understanding and really laying low, but then once I got the understanding, really punching above my weight and really going far.
That's quite interesting because I think that was sort of my next question is, if you can give us like around probably three tips, that if someone is new to certain place, how do you kind of, make your own identity, or do you blend in, or how do you, see through things, it could be at any age, at any situation, when you're new to a different culture, different society, how, because I think you have done that well. So if there is anything out of your learnings, as you mentioned that you had your own share of learning, I think you just mentioned one of them is like keeping a low, kind of imbibing understanding, and then kind of coming in the forefront, if that's how it was, or if you can share with us like what was your learning that even our listeners can probably take some
Huh?
help from that.
Yeah, of course. So, in terms of my learning, I think it was just having an open mind, just being able to engage with sort of any person without any prejudice, without any sort of pre-thinking involved. So, just really learning from the environment, learning from the culture. I grew up in Canberra now for the last couple of years. So, in Canberra, it's often very politically charged. A lot of people work for government. There's a lot of opportunities to learn and just to know more about what people do in the unique subsets of their work. So just really keeping an open mind, engaging in conversations, I think would be sort of the first step, and just taking genuine interest in people, in topics, in different things, growing a few hobbies, playing a team sport, really understanding the culture, Australian culture, and the values that it really stands for. And then I think next step would just be keeping an open mind, engaging in discussions once again, but really looking to participate in different parts, volunteering. I think that's perfect first step for any young person, any young migrant to really get involved in policy making decisions, in other decisions, and just everyday life that they can participate. And people will take notice if you're a dedicated volunteer, you're really engaged. And then from that point onwards, it's really just become about networking and really seeing what opportunities are out there, whether that's paid, unpaid, or just you're just having a good time. I think just keeping an open mind to that, and knowing that your growth will come, and that if you're dedicated, you're motivated, and you take the right steps, and you're a bit lucky as well at times, you can really run wild.
Yeah, I think those are some really hands-on tips that you have shared. And probably this goes with the saying that, in order to kind of expect other people to understand you, you need to first understand them. Sort of that is really amazing that you have sort of shared with us, that giving them the space, trying to, understand other people, their culture, and then, you also keeping your identity intact, but kind of, blending in but having your own identity.
Yeah.
Networking, a really really important tip that you shared over here. Engaging is one of the best tips, I think, that you have shared, that engagement is so important, to have that conversation going on, to understand what really works, what doesn't really work, and being able to put your point forward. And I think in that way Australia is quite and a supportive environment where you are, at least have the chance to kind of put your point forward, and people will respect you, hear you for that. So I think, Saad, I think you always had that mindset. It could probably be that you were in that environment. Your father was a diplomat. He was into this a field of policy making and a lot more. Was this the only reason that you developed interest in this side of in this field, or were there any other elements while you were growing up that you really got interested in the field that you're in right now?
I think definitely so. My father's career in itself, I think, is quite impressive, and that it's been a lesson for me that he can do a lot of change in the world. So he's a diplomat for Pakistan, got to move around the world, and he's still serving in Pakistan now. So get to learn from him every day. I get to use him as a sounding board. So I think I definitely have that advantage there. But otherwise, I think it was just during year 11, year 12, when I really realized here that I could be doing something in the social debate and social discourse and just general policy making, and that if I start an initiative, take a lead on something, I can really make an impact. So I think that realization came from just watching a documentary on TV. It was an ABC documentary on the Afghan cameleers, Muslim camel drivers that traversed outback Australia in the 19th and 20th centuries, and people just forgot about them. That migrant legacy was there. These people were there for 60 years, and that come the railway, come the car, they really just were forgotten about. So watching that documentary, I'm like, okay, this is a forgotten history. This is something that I can tackle. This can be my first project, and that I can just start interviewing people, reach out. hopefully people respond favorably. I'm just a young boy, 16, 17 years of age, and hopefully people run with it, people reciprocate, and yeah, I get to interview cool people. And I think from there, one step led to another, and that I got more opportunities to engage, got a bit of funding from the
Interesting,
government,
because
got recognized, and yeah.
yeah, I think that's a very essential and a very, I would like to applaud, I think, Australia for that, in that respect, because they do encourage ideas, they do encourage people who can actually bring forth some sort of positive change. As you mentioned about the fundings, the grant, and being able to kind of give you that recognition that is required for the voice that you have, for what you stand. I want to kind of know over here, like you mentioned, you were 16, 17, and you started, something clicked with you, and you took the action right away. You started kind of taking the steps. How did the you know the journey of you came about to be where you are right now? Did you foresee any sort of role that you're playing right now at that point in time, or you just went with the flow? Because for a lot of the youth who's listening to us, or even people who are maybe starting the second innings, sometimes the line is so blurred. You have so many options available that you really don't know where to go forward. So if that is a situation that someone is in, and probably if you had a clear idea, how you would probably guide, or maybe help them see through that situation.
I think it's a really fine line between dreaming and just not being able to predict what your future sort of next steps is. If you ask me how I would, looking back in hindsight, look at my growth, it would just be, yeah, I cannot predict more than a year ahead that this is what I'll be doing. These are the opportunities that will become, that I'll be on Ishani's podcast, even that. Yeah, there's definitely nothing I can really forecast there. But in terms of just being able to dream, being able to achieve, starting a podcast at 16, 17, working to highlight some bit of migrant legacy, that led one opportunity to another. So just having those outlandish dreams, having those outlandish stuff, and just taking the first step. And that a lot of people are scared. At times, I'm even scared of doing things because I'm like, oh, how will it be received, or how will people take it, and will I get funding? What will happen? I think those things will come with time, but it's just about taking the first step, selling it to the first person that you'd like to engage with, and then I think from there you build a sense of credibility, you build trust. People see that you're authentic, that you're genuine, and that you can really do stuff. And from there, I think people take you a lot more seriously, and that a 16, 17-year-old me was going out, traveling out to remote outback towns, interviewing mayors, MPs, doing a whole bunch of stuff that I wouldn't even imagine myself doing at that time. And the funny thing there was that I couldn't even rent a hotel room. I wasn't 18, so I had to call
Oh.
all the hotels around town and say, "Oh, I'm here doing a podcast, doing a documentary. Can I rent a room?" They're like, "No, you're not 18." So I think that was a roadblock in terms of some of my ambitions, but then eventually got past that. And I think since then COVID came, so a lot of my recordings just became online and whatnot. But I think that's one of the cool stories I have.
Great, so you don't have to rent out any hotels or motels any longer. Amazing. So that is a really interesting trajectory that you had, and I see that it was all your will to go through things. You went with the flow, but you kept on taking the necessary steps that was required.
Yeah.
And I think your interest in the field that you are in really propelled and supported you to kind of go to the next level as well. So in around those times, I think at that period you mentioned that you obviously feel scared, doing something for the first time, but you have to kind of start sharing it with someone to build the credibility, and then the confidence starts building. So are you able to take us through a time so far in your career that it was the most difficult, challenging time emotionally, mentally? If yes, and how did you go past that?
Yes. In terms of emotionally, mentally, I think over time, I just kept saying yes to things. Any opportunity that came about, any way to engage, I was like, yes, yes, yes. I'd love to work with you. And I think there came a point where I was just doing a fair bit, and I think that comes with any young change maker, that they're doing a whole lot at the same time. I was studying at the ANU, the Australian National University. I was just doing what other young people do, but at the same time, I was living a second life in that. I was doing cool stuff within the world of media. I was making a documentary, doing a podcast, and then soon got involved in some side of administration and the not-for-profit sector. So it really just became, I was living a double life at some point. People are like, oh yeah, you're a young person. We see you here, we see you there, but you're also doing cool stuff in the change-making space. So as a 19, 20-year-old at that point, just posting on LinkedIn, posting about what I'm doing or on my stories. A lot of other people would say it's quite interesting, but at other times people would say, yeah, he's trying too hard, or he's just working a whole lot, burning himself out. So I think just countering those messages and just really keeping head down, working. And I think come this point, I think really proud of the portfolio of work that I've built up, the credibility that I have, and just the people I've met over the last few years. I think that's been quite a lot and quite impressive, and that taking that first step early really helped me. And I think anyone that not really doubted, but like people that had questions on, oh, why is he doing this at a young age? What are the intrinsic motivators? I think that's been made apparent.
That's incredible. I think I really like the aspect where you emphasize, how people around you had that different opinions, and they are more trying to kind of tell according to them, they feel like you're burning yourself out. But you're the best judge of your own capacity and what really is, helping you go forward in your life. You feel happy in a day with what you're working. So anyone who's listening to us out there, it really depends on you at whatever age you are. What you can balance is in your hands. If you're able to kind of take up a couple of things at one point in time, and if you're able to do that well, that's good enough. If that doesn't work for you, then that's also good enough. Then you can see through things that work best for you. And this is the amazing thing, I think, which Saad has really brought forward, is listen to what you or your voice really kind of tells you. Go according to what you feel is right for you, and keep moving on. You will always have that point in life when you're doubting yourself, listening to other people's feedback. Sometimes you kind of need to sit back and reflect on it, because some things might make sense. You might learn from their experience, but at the end of the day, if you kind of sit down with your heart and listen to what it really wants, I think you'll get a good direction. So thank you, Saad, for sharing that. I think that was a really good takeaway. I kind of want to maybe wrap up this episode with a really interesting, probably an interesting question. I'm not sure how we see it right now, but I think being in politics, being a policy maker, a change maker, everyone likes to, give their opinions. Everyone likes to, say things to kind of, make things be better. But being in that position, taking that ownership and going through the government procedure, it's a very time taking task, but it is important as well. And not a lot of people at this point in time is they are really up for taking that challenge. So yeah, not a lot of people at the young age or whatever age that they are in, that if they want to see that change in politics, that's not a popular opinion to be in politics. So for people around, who really want to be in politics, but they have like, they're like two minds, whether should I be there? It's that's the space for me. Do you have something to share with from your experience, how it has been your journey, and if they want to be, then why they should be there?
I think each of us in our individual capacities, anyone is a change maker, and that you always feel the imposter syndrome. That's a word that's thrown around a lot, that you feel like you shouldn't be in the room, that what are your credentials to be there? But I think overcoming that and really looking to make your mark, really looking to have your say. Like you mentioned, everyone likes to say their opinion, likes to have a go at the modern sort of social discourses. But I think it's really just recognizing the individual role that you have, and that the unique perspective that you bring, and that even if you don't have a lot of work experience behind you, a lot of stories, a lot of things to tell, that you have a unique perspective. Everyone has a unique childhood and has really gone through a whole lot of things to become the person that they are today, and that perspective, even that, is more than enough for them to be able to contribute to any debate, let alone policy, social, economic, anything. I think that's quite important. And for me, I think it was just, again, the unique perspective that I bring around migration, around politics, around diplomacy, around all these topic areas, and just really finding my niche, carving my own way through, and recognizing what I need to do to take sort of the next step into my journey. And what I forecast there is just becoming a leader, becoming a torchbearer, as you mentioned at the start of the interview. So overall, for any young change maker, anyone looking to take their first step, I think it's just about doing what you can to really achieve, really taking the step, talking to people, really engaging with the general processes, engaging with society, and really imagining what you can be contributing to the debate, whether that's policy, social, anything else. Just really taking that on and realizing that change is sort of around the corner and that opportunities will come again and again. People will respect what you have to deliver, and I think it's really just all about that.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Saad, for taking through your journey. And I think you have had a really unique experience while growing up, and you've actually used that all those bits to kind of hone your skills, hone your mindset, and kind of really evolve from there, and still, keep taking the steps that's necessary for you, that you, as you said, and you took the steps very early on. So I think for anyone, if there's a takeaway that I like to kind of give from this particular episode, is that take the step that you want to early on in your life as much as you can. So thank you so much, Saad, for being on my first step ever. And I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
Uh, in terms of quotes or sayings, that's a difficult one. But I think there's one from Steve Jobs, and I don't remember it exactly, but it's more about that your time is valuable and that you shouldn't be living anyone else's life, and that you can be taking whatever steps you can with your own time, and you can really see yourself achieve. So I think that's a quote. Love to end with.
Amazing. I love that. You should not be living anyone else's life, and time is valuable. That is great. Thank you so much, Saad, for being on my first step ever. And if you are interested in the field of change making, policy making, or you want to know a bit more about Saad's journey, what he's been doing for the multicultural migrant over here, I will leave a link below in the show notes. So do follow him if you would love to. And as I always say, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. If you're still glued together on this episode, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And if you really want to hear more such stories from around the globe, then subscribe to my First Step Ever podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify, whichever platform you prefer. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my First Step Ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.